Have you ever wondered how movies are really made? Like, why that actor, not that one? Didn't anyone notice that crazy choice? Why are writers so often banned from film sets? What does the studio actually do? Well, during the time I worked on Breast Men, I kept a journal, which I'm going to share with you, edited for clarity, but otherwise verbatim. When I was writing it, I thought I was just recording my thoughts and feelings of the day, the ones that were simmering beneath my emotional hugging exterior, and had no idea that Matoyan and working on Breast Men, Pam, Matt, Trey, and BK Lounge, and the day-to-day nature of Hollywood itself were going to take me straight down the rabbit hole. So, written by John Stockwell, rewritten and directed by Larry O'Neill, and produced by Gary Lucchese, Matoyan, after months of vacillation and indecisiveness, finally pulled the trigger and greenlit Breast Men. I went to the In the Gloaming premiere tonight with George Cheeks. Christopher Reeve was there, and Glenn Close, Michael Keaton, Dick Donner, Mary Lou Henner, and Charles Dutton. Matoyan is a total narcissist. He started his introductory speech by talking about HBO and the Chris Reeve Foundation. Then he said that this movie had a very special meaning to him, that he'd only been at HBO for 3 months at this point, and that his first Nielsen 30 share movie when he ran CBS Movies and Minis was Sarah Plain and Tall, starring Glenn Close. He then went on to talk about some movie he'd made about a child molester and how everyone said no one would play the child molester and that they offered it to their top choice and that top choice took it, Christopher Reeve. Somehow, it was all about him. Afterwards, Matoyan told me it was all extemporaneous except for the Chris Reeve Foundation stuff. I found it even more horrific that he hadn't bothered to plan a speech. His fallback is to talk about himself in relation to the material. After the movie, interminable 1 hour that felt feature length, Fred Zolo, the producer, got up to introduce Christopher Reeve. During Fred's speech, I kept hearing this very labored breathing coming out of the speakers, and only later realized it was a mic to Christopher Reeve from the back of the theater so he could give his speech from there. It was very weird. Fred speaking with the unnatural breaths in and out surrounding him, but distinct from him, like I was in a horror film and watching a prospective victim from the killer's point of view. On Friday, I had an irritating meeting with director Bill Condon in which he argued with me about really stupid points in the script outline. Alec Baldwin called and left a message about it. We haven't spoken yet. On Saturday, Pam came over to check out my new espresso maker, the Estro Profi, though we didn't drink the coffee once it was done, just looked at it. Then we had some shots of Chinaco and glasses of Taj Mahal and got pretty drunk while watching TV and talking about our creative careers. She wants us to work together, which was nice to hear from Pam, since I can't always tell. Later, we met up with Stockwell at Coco Pazzo, where he ran into Bianca Jagger. He apparently used to be her boy toy or something in the late 70s. Then Stockwell and I went to St. Nick's, where we ran into Matt Stone, who kept touching me. I think because I was ignoring him, he was being overly friendly and very touchy-feely to get my attention. Stockwell told us that he and Tom Cruise had fucked the same woman in a threesome and that Tom never made a move on him, though Stockwell said he probably would have responded if Tom had. On Thursday, Matoyan, Ellen, and I went to see David Schwimmer, whom we'd cast in the lead of Breast Men, in some play. We met up with Schwimmer afterwards. Very uncomfortable. No one really had anything to say. We complimented him. He mentioned he'd dated a Southern girl for 2 years. Schwimmer brought up Emily Proctor, Larry, the director's top choice for female lead. He said that he liked Matoyan's top choice, Lara Flynn Boyle, that he'd worked with her, but that he deliberately hadn't called her because Emily was so good in the room. Outside, Matoyan told me he wasn't going to let Schwimmer boss him around on this. Previously, he had said to me that he didn't trust Larry's taste in actors. I told Matoyan that Larry's script rewrite showed that he was making the same movie we were, that was his taste. He said the choices Larry had presented him with were horrible. I told him, for the millionth time, that the choices weren't Larry's, that Larry had given us the least bad of the choices he'd been given. Matoyan said Larry should have refused them all and demanded more choices. I said that since we hadn't put a casting director on until 2 weeks before the start of principal photography, Larry, as the director, had other things to do than to focus solely on the casting. So the next morning, Ellen went down to Matoyan and said they had to make a decision about the whole female lead thing today because they had to start the breast prosthesis no later than Saturday. She said she'd shove Lara Flynn Boyle down their throats, that she'd done similar things for Bob and Richard. Matoyan said he didn't want to shove anyone down anyone's throat and that he could probably live with Emily Proctor. Ellen and Larry went off to look at a makeup test, assuming everything was going to be fine. At lunch, Matoyan told me he was going to make them hire Lara Flynn Boyle. I said, uh-huh. He asked if they were going to be upset. I said they would. He said, why? Don't they like Lara Flynn Boyle? I said that HBO had chosen David Schwimmer to play first lead. David Schwimmer had chosen Chris Cooper to play second lead, and that the only person the director, Larry O'Neill, had both any control over and was enthusiastic about was Emily Proctor, and that given that the part was barely third lead, yes, he'd be upset about not getting his choice for this part. Matoyan said Larry was just going to have to grow up. So I called producer Gary Lucchese and had him call Matoyan. Matoyan told Lucchese that they could have Emily Proctor, but that he was very upset about it, meaning they could have their way but alienate Matoyan. So Lucchese backed down because it doesn't help him to have the studio as an enemy. It was this methodology that sent Ellen over the edge. I think she finally realized that she can't work for him anymore. We went to the production office and called Lucchese to strategize. In front of Lucchese, she said that she hated Matoyan and that she was looking for a new job starting tomorrow. She said Matoyan was a prick for putting the production in this position instead of just making a decision about it, which Larry later said he would have preferred, and that the production should just throw it back in his face. So we had Larry call and say that he understood that Matoyan was going to let them have Emily Proctor, but that he was very upset about it and that he didn't want the studio to be upset and that Matoyan should just tell him what he wanted him to do. Of course, Matoyan said that he loved Emily Proctor and to go ahead and hire her. Larry was very happy. Ellen called Matoyan, acting all confused, and he said that he let Larry hire Emily because he finally decided he just had to trust the director he'd hired, like he'd had anything to do with it. With David Schwimmer, Chris Cooper, and Emily Proctor, Matoyan had the following acting advice. Watch out for Schwimmer's mugging. Change the script for Chris Cooper's delivery. Keep an eye on Emily Proctor's tendency to go for the cute.
What